Hello everyone and welcome back. I am Andy Bryan from Awaken Your Soul Pathway, and this is a bonus interview for the Awaken Your Inner Warrior course. Today we're going to be speaking about the Divine Feminine and what it means to embody the Divine Feminine as a woman, and also about how we can connect with the Divine Feminine within us as men. Today I'm here with Gail Evans from Your Soul Revealed, and she's going to be speaking about what it means to truly embody that and connect with that as women. And again, as we said, we're going to jump into what it means towards the end of the interview, is connecting with that from a masculine aspect as well. So before we jump into the interview itself, tell me a bit more about yourself, Gail, who you are and what you do.
Hello everyone. So I'm a soul alignment strategist, and what that really is about bringing in the pieces of the self that have been lost since childhood and kind of bringing all these pieces back in, because a lot of these elements reside in our shadow. We kind of dismiss them based on our caregivers, which is usually parents, belief systems, and who they tell us we are. And so my whole thing is really about retracing the steps and looking at where we've been wounded and trying to basically bring us back to the elements that, the masculine and feminine and all of that, pulling it back together so that we can be one whole person.
Love it. Excellent. And I think that is a great place to start, really, with the interview, from the beginning, because we look at our childhood wounds, we look at our inner wounds, and through childhood we each have our own traumas, whether we've had a great upbringing or whether we've had that traumatic upbringing that's not been, what we'd expect. But we tend to carry that through into adulthood as we step into the roles of the masculine and feminine. And I suppose my question is, how do we bring those wounds into embodying the feminine as women, as you sort of step into your roles into adulthood?
That's a good question. I can go from my perspective. My background is obviously growing up in a Scottish family, and Scottish women are notoriously kind of hardworking and tough, and they just get on with it because that's the background, right? The backstory of the ancestry is poverty and just having to get on with it, and lots of illness and struggling for things. And I personally feel that in my family and in a lot of families, especially ones that come from a poverty mentality, there's a lot of masculine energy that has been brought into the families, and even within women, and maybe particularly within women, because they had to put up with so much stuff and they had to keep going forward and they had to take action. They couldn't really be feeling their emotions. The time at the moment is really about embodying your emotional capabilities and learning how to balance. Back in those days, there's no time for that crap. We're not looking at emotions. We're not looking at any of that stuff. So I really see it in my family that when I really started looking at this stuff, I could see that toxic masculinity had been brought in, as in the separation from emotional self into a mental self. And thus, me didn't really land very well. It was kind of like I was too emotional, I was too sensitive. I don't think anyone knew what to do with me, and the pattern was to ignore the emotion because that's what toxic masculinity would do.
Yep.
So the feminine, right? The feminine in me was never met. And I personally feel at the moment that women and men who have feminine essences, and actually guys who don't have feminine essences either, but basically everybody is having to learn what femininity actually is. I think many people believe that femininity is weakness, and it's absolutely not.
Definitely, and I can completely relate to what you shared there in terms of me being quite sensitive when I was younger and very expressive in who I was, and with that in mind, it was generally a feeling of pushing that feminine aspect away and not allowing me to connect with that inner feminine, which is interesting, and that toxic masculinity comes out through that as well. So it's interesting how the society has played that role, as well as your family have played that role. So all culminating together, they've amplified the effect of what it is to step into that toxic masculine, don't you think?
Yes, I think that in the collective unconscious, there's some belief systems that are tripping around the world, the Western world anyway, that tell us that masculinity has more power and femininity is weak. Femininity is wishy-washy or too airy-fairy, or at its toxic level, it's crazy, screaming banshee, or overt sexuality. Right? Now, sexuality comes in there, but comes in there in both of the sexes. I think the Western world portrays female sexuality in a way that makes feminine look promiscuous and dumb.
Yeah.
Right? So that's kind of how we are playing out at the moment.
I can completely relate to that. Let me just hang up that call a second. A bad time there.
That's okay. It was a very feminine ringtone. we'll embrace it.
So jumping into that collective unconscious of the feminine. My question here is, I am fully behind, women embodying their feminine and really standing up for what is true and right for them. I think that's really important and key, because I do feel like feminine beauty is really there when they connect with their own emotions, and it's really nice to see. I love that aspect of women. But what I've tend to notice myself, and this isn't any disrespect at all, but I found the feminine movement seemed to have become out of balance in many ways, and I feel like sometimes it's embodying more of the masculine and suppressing the men and masculine in society, instead of embodying that feminine and what it really means to connect with that. What are your thoughts on that in terms of connecting with what I just shared there?
I definitely see that in the world. As I said, like, I can see it in my family, and I can see it in the world generally, and with my clients, that there are aspects that women have taken on that are definitely not from the feminine. It's definitely come from a place where they feel that they have to match men in some way in order to reclaim their power. Absolutely. But you know what's really interesting to me, and I would like your take on this, actually. I don't think that women know anymore what femininity is. I think that is elusive. I think femininity, as I said, is portrayed as weakness and sort of, from the old days of James Bond. James Bond walks in a room and all women fall at his feet and are succumbed by him, right? It's kind of like that. I don't think women really understand that it's okay to be powerful and female. And because of that, they don't want to go back to the days of not having the vote and not having power, not having their say. And they want alignment, but they don't want weakness. And I would also say it's the same for guys. And so my question to you is, I know you're interviewing me, but I want to ask you a question. What do you think that femininity is?
Thanks for sharing that, because I can completely relate to that in terms of I can see what you mean when you say that women are finding it difficult to connect with what it means to be that woman, because they're struggling for that inner power in many ways, and that collective unconscious being governed so highly by the masculine. But in terms of men, I can see that as well, because like you said, that weakness, why would we want to connect with that quote unquote weakness? Because none of us want to be weak at all. Whereas I find emotions and connecting with the rawness of emotions is real strength, because once you go to that place, it is powerful. It is unbelievably powerful, and it's who you are. You know, it's the rawness of who you are. And I absolutely,
Yeah.
you know, love connecting with that aspect of who I am. And I know that in times it can be quite difficult, you know, because you've got sensitive and, you know, raw, as I said, and we all need that space and time in order to, you know, release the emotions and feelings. But for me, in terms of what it means to connect with the feminine, you know, going back to your question, I think it comes back to connecting with the rawness of emotions and stepping into who you truly are in terms of your emotions, embodying that, and being okay with allowing your sensitivity to come through. But from a man's aspect, it's being a warrior. Talk about awakening your inner warrior, but you know, living from the heart space and connecting with that, and not being afraid of stepping into that, because it can be hard, you know, especially when it comes to, you know, emotions of love and feelings, because it can bring out the greatest of fears within us. You know, I do tend to believe we either choose love or fear, and I never realised that so much until connecting with people. That's
Absolutely.
when high emotions are at play, fear can take a big role. So
can I add in here, just on what you were saying?
Yeah.
Just because it's come up. So what you're saying is exactly true. It's femininity, in part, is about the sort of reorganizing and realignment of emotion. But unfortunately, right, what we believe that is kind of like, my mom had Love Island on the other day, watching Love Island. I don't watch TV normally, but I've been watching more since I've been here. And watching the girls go into emotion, right? They don't know what to do with it. It's just coming out. They have no way to communicate it. It's just coming out. It's a mess. The guys who they're having the emotion about, they don't know what to do with it either. No one knows what to do with it, and everyone is frightened of it. And I believe that's why we represent the feminine as weak and erratic and over emotional and too sensitive, instead of actually looking at that's the feminine that has not been met.
Can I have a question? I have a question for you here. Then a really interesting question that came up, and this is just from an insight that came to me in those moments. So, would you say that the true femininity and connecting with your divine and inner feminine is really about connecting with those emotions and feelings and honoring them for what they are, in terms of not acting erratically in these situations, but truly connecting and embracing of what they are in those moments, so that we can feel and we can work through what it is that is being revealed to us in the situation?
Yes, like absolutely. Listening, connecting, right? This is the kind of irony that I'm trying to portray, right? The feminine is emotion. It's everywhere. It's in every element of your body. It's body wisdom, right? I work a lot with the body when it comes to inner child and soul connection. That's the feminine energy. It's the meeting of self. It's the meeting of inner child. It's compassion, really. If we just wanted to name it one word, that's what it would be. Compassion, right? The masculine is the action taking part, but we need the compassion within the self and for other people, just the way we should be with our children, right? But I believe that the feminine rising, this whole time with the feminine rising and within ourselves, emotions needing to be met, and in our children asking for our attention and the feminine coming to meet them, it's also about the masculine coming back into balance, where you're met without fear, right? The masculine energy, not men in particular, just masculine energy, is present. It is not going to run away anywhere. It's not abandoning you. It's solid and steadfast and all of that. So if we truly desire to become the feminine energy in its full empowerment, we absolutely need the masculine to meet us, to meet the feminine and witness the feminine.
Definitely.
That makes sense.
It's interesting you say all that, because when we do balance out the divine masculine and feminine, it's really not only honoring both those aspects, but you've got the assertive masculine, which is striving to get to where they want and really embodying that power, in terms of energy. Whereas that feminine at the same time is it's connected with that inner sensitivity and emotions and what it means in that. From a spiritual aspect, I tend to look at it with cycles of the moon. We've got the cycles of the moon, new moon and full moon. When we connect with the full moon, we connect with the inner emotions and feelings. The new moon is that new cycle, rebirthing of that new cycle. When we start that new cycle, we're in the birthing of that inner feminine, bring up those emotions and feelings and desires and what we truly want. And then throughout that cycle of the journey, we allow the embodiment of the masculine to come into play, it seems, to go after what we want in that cycle in pursuit of what we truly desire. But that's when the masculine and feminine really does, in some ways, come into play and into balance, until we reach the end of that moon cycle, when that is that rebirth, that completion of whatever that is we've been working towards.
Absolutely. I think a lot of women will relate to that in their own cycle. I totally relate to what you just said there. It's like, I'll deal with the emotions that week. Later on, I don't need to deal with them anymore. I can do what I want to do. Absolutely. That's life.
So I have a question for you then. So we've spoken about, aspects of the toxic masculine, and in many ways, placing a cover over what the feminine means. So how do we shift from that place of the unhealthy masculine to truly embodying that feminine within us? And first of all, I wanted to speak to you about how women can start to shift into that place, and then we can obviously speak about men as well. So.
Okay, so for women, I think this has been a journey that's been happening for a long time, but it's been very slow. And I do feel that it's really about women understanding their own emotions, their own feelings, not denying when they feel some kind of intuition that their brain tells them to ignore, right? Because femininity really is highly connected to your intuitive body wisdom, right? If you're disconnected from your intuition, especially as a woman, then you kind of feel lost. Like, women are natural empaths, most of us, maybe not everyone, but most of us. So it's really reconnecting back with the intuition, back with your wisdom, and trying to, I guess for all sexes really, is navigating fear, because fear can really clog up that area. Unfortunately, fear and intuition reside in the same place. Usually it's right on the stomach. So it's really hard to tell at the beginning. You get something like, oh, I don't trust that person, or I don't think that's the path that I should take. But because fear is entangled with it, you don't trust it straight away. So you have to start to learn to trust the intuition. You have to start to recognize which is fear and which is guidance. And at the beginning, that's tough. At the beginning, that's difficult. But that's kind of where I see women heading towards.
Definitely, no, that's very, very interesting and very, very important. So how do we begin to, or how do you as women begin to shift from that wounded, suppressed feminine to that embodied feminine? How do we begin to heal those wounds in terms of, fully embracing that?
Well, I kind of see it as really with everyone, whether it's masculine or feminine, the healing always starts with, to me anyway, inner child wounds. Most of our stuff happens there. And as I said before, because the collective unconscious is still kind of down on femininity, in the sense of they see it as weakness or erratic behavior and being overly emotional, we need to retrace the steps to find out, when did that happen? So for me, when I look back at my life and I look at the fact that I was a very sensitive, empathic child, and in the feminine, what happened? Well, what happened is I wasn't met in that emotion. No one would meet me. I was told that it was too much, or I was ignored. And so how I can help myself is by witnessing other people who display that, who aren't too much, right? If you don't have anyone around you, you go and seek people online who witness you, right? Because we need witnessing. So find people who can witness you, who can relay back to you that actually it's okay to be a sensitive, empathic person that embodies the feminine energy. So do that first, and then you have to start to meet yourself. So the first part is find people who can meet you, get amazing coaches like us, or find people online that you can, be supported by. Find a tribe of women who are able to let you be feminine in that space and won't judge you for it. But most of all, then learn to meet yourself, as in, I'm maybe not explaining what meeting is. I mean, you should explain that. So what I mean by being met is by being fully witnessed and validated. Now, most of us seek validation, I think, especially women, in intimate relationships. But we're making a huge mistake when we do that, because now we're giving our power away to someone else. So for me, the validation of self by self is huge.
And, one thing that I wanted to connect with you there is, witnessing yourself, for me, from looking at my work and how I share some of this stuff, for me, it's allowing you to connect with the truth of who you are, and really allowing yourself to step into that truth. Because if we look at what the masculine represents in terms of suppressing that inner feminine, the masculine is very good at suppressing or denying, or placing it to one side as if it doesn't truly exist within us. And for me, that's in many ways denying the truth that lives within us. Truth within our shadow. Our inner wounds and our inner child stuff is all present within our shadow, isn't it? So we need to be able to honor ourselves within our shadow and love that aspect of ourselves. And obviously loving that aspect is that inner feminine, isn't it? Loving self-nurture, care, and really allowing yourself to be raw in who you are. But do you feel like, that self-witness is very much about connecting with your inner truth as well?
Yes, because to me, I think our language is just slightly different. I would say reconnecting to your soul voice, because I believe there is a part of us, an entity, whatever you want to call it, that resides within us and without us, and in some other paradigm that is constantly talking to us and trying to lead us forward into our best potential, right? Because it's only potential, right? We have everything we need, but it's only potential until we activate it in the 3D, right? Yeah. So for me, a lot of that activation only really happens when we meet ourselves in love, when we go back and we really talk to ourselves with compassion. Now, that is feminine energy in its highest. Like you said, it's the nurturing mother, right? Yeah. Or the crone, it would have been in the past, although they've made the crone like a horrible, ugly thing now. But the crone in the past would have been the wise woman that would come and look after you, Yeah. And so we've kind of lost that ability because we don't live in communities where we have elders who are talking to us. We've lost lots of aspects of femininity through that, and masculinity. So the thing is, we have to go and seek out people who are doing the work, and then we have to learn how to be really truly compassionate with self, because once we do that and we embody the feminine in its highest form, which is self-compassion, we can then truly self-love, and we can then really love outside of ourselves. Before then, we're clutching for love outside of ourselves. We're not truly loving ourselves. We go, oh, is he the one? Is she the one? Is he the one? Right? Yeah. We're not really fully loving us. we're doing that thing. And then what happens is once we really fully embody that, we have an opportunity for our masculine energy to meet that and to step up, instead of it being the other way around, where we're trained to be really mind dominant, which can be very toxic masculine, just all about the mind and where we're going and what we're doing and how much money we're making. And I'm not saying that to say that money's bad. It's just that sometimes the masculine energy can become so blinkered, like a horse on a racetrack, that it misses the inner child calling for its attention, calling for your attention. It misses the heart aching. It misses all of that stuff.
And again, I love what you say, and I think if we deny our inner child so much, then it can be so hard for us to step back into that. If we don't honour that. But
absolutely,
everything takes time, and I think honouring that and being that self-witness and going back to that womb, the divine feminine is already in the womb. The child has got everything, or the fetus has got everything it needs. The motherly love, all the nutrition in the mother's womb straight away as well. So with the feminine in mind, they do already have all that they need. It's just about noticing that within themselves again, isn't it? I guess.
I think it's understanding the conditioning. So understand that, for me, definitely looking at my family and doing some work on myself, I realized that actually the women in my family weren't really embodying the divine feminine. They'd stepped into more of a masculine role. So that was the first thing. I witnessed that. And then I understood that was happening within myself. And so then I could learn how to meet myself by watching other people who were not only talking about feminine energy, but really talking about consciousness, but really starting to understand that feelings are not, being emotional and showing that you have emotion is not bad and it's not weak. So really starting to honor that. I have this saying, which is all emotions are valid. Because as soon as I work with a client and they say something, I shouldn't feel this way, I shouldn't be like this, that's the first thing I'll say to them. All emotions are valid, meaning they're all trying to tell you something. And if you actually parent it like a loving mother and use that feminine energy, then you don't have to make everything wrong about you. You can love that part of you. You can start to listen to it and ask it what it really wants from you.
Yeah. And I guess the feminine from that point of view is allowing the process of feeling to be undergone, so they can step into that.
Yeah, loving it, and then allowing yourself to shine from that place, to shine with your emotion, rather than looking at it like a bad thing and trying to squash it all. And like that's trying to put it in a box is toxic masculine. Or we'll just box that emotion till later when I can deal with it. Okay, there might be some moments when that's appropriate. Maybe you're at work, maybe you're about to go on stage to do a talk and you can show that you're upset about some discussion that happened. But generally, we're not doing that in a moment when we have to step up. We're doing that every moment of our lives.
Yeah.
We're doing it all the time. We're doing it when we, when we go to sleep, maybe is the only time we let ourselves feel it. There's a little tear. And then we go, go to sleep, and we kind of avoid it. Avoidance of emotions is classic, Mr. Spock. And he might be highly intelligent, but we all know in the conscious community that intelligence does not mean that you are consciously aware. And for women in particular, we have to become consciously aware of the wounds that we have and learn to speak them in a way that is not vomiting over anyone else. It's not vomiting your emotion. That's not cool. That's not divine feminine. That's toxic feminine.
Yeah. So one final question then. I've got one final question. Where do you feel the importance of sisterhood groups or women's groups come into play in terms of supporting people in terms of connecting with that divine feminine?
I think the importance of women coming together is really in that honoring of emotion and honoring of intuition, because we just aren't really doing that in the world yet. I think emotions are starting to become more prevalent. There's lots of people talking about mental health, which to me really is emotional health. So women's groups can definitely do that for one another, but hugely helping them to understand about their inner wisdom. Because I kind of feel that when we get to the point where we really trust that inner guidance above the mind, I don't know whether I'll be here and alive when that happens, but if we can get to that place where we trust the guidance beyond the mind, we'll have a way different connection to feminine energy, because that's who she is. You know, the feminine is the planet. It is connected in every nuance of life. You have trees and the streams and the animals and people, and that's the feminine energy. It wants to connect into all of that. That's what your intuition is, right? You don't, you know, a flower just knows when to grow. A lamb just knows when it's going to be born. We don't have to be thinking so much, right? That makes sense?
Definitely. No, I completely agree. It's, you know, we call it Mother Earth, don't we? We call it Mother Earth, Gaia. You know, it's beautiful.
Yes.
So where can we find out more about yourself and your work in terms of your Soul Revealed?
You can find me, if you want to join my group on Facebook, you can find me there, Your Soul Revealed. I have pages there, and I've got a website, yoursoulrevealed.com. You can find me.
Perfect. Well, thank you for joining me today to speak about what it means to truly embody that divine feminine. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and I think we've brought up some really valid points in order for women to connect with their feminine and men to connect with their inner feminine as well. So
you're so welcome. Thank you for having me.
And yeah, thanks again. And for those of you who want to, you know, find out more about the course Awaken Your Inner Warrior, you can find it on Udemy. This is a bonus interview within the course, but it's also available online for you to help and as I said, connect with, you know, the divine feminine within you. So thank you all for listening again, and I'll see you all again very soon for another interview. Bye for now.
Bye.